We have a very special guest for you today. It's Michael Eleftheriades, who is architect and also a photographer who's been running a very successful Nikon Owner Magazine London Group since 2007. So, Mike, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you, and nice to see you, Konstantin. Thank you for inviting me. I am primarily a photographer, and also I do a lot of architectural work. So I run my own business, and through the years, I would say that I have been doing more photographic-related work recently than before. So less architecture, more photography.
But as an architect, do you do also an architectural photographer, since you're a photographer as well?
Yes, I do projects that actually use both skills, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And does this photography involves obviously photographs of the buildings, but do you actually get the shots of some specific details that only architects will understand?
Well, I think, when I was training as an architect, I had a big requirement to do photography, basically, so that I can record what I was doing.
Oh, I see.
It kind of has been reversed. I was doing more architecture, less photography. Now I do more photography and less architecture. But yes, if you are an architect by training, you understand the architectural process. So when you're photographing, you have a deeper understanding of what you're doing.
I see. So architectural photography is not only the photographs of pretty buildings and bridges that you see, it actually involves a little bit more knowledge than that.
Yes, well, it involves recording the process of building, of constructing. And sometimes, if it's a historical building, actually the refurbishment and, making corrective measures so that the building remains standing. So, yeah.
And that's what they don't tell you on the internet. Now, tell me about the club. Obviously, you've been running events during the pandemic pretty much on a weekly schedule. So what do you guys do normally?
Well, if we compare to what we did in the past, we organized workshops and we had seminars. The seminars were basically real meetings, and we would try and have about one per month. And we would meet in the West End, and I would bring a carload of equipment, projection screens, 2 projectors, speakers and all of that. Obviously, the pandemic has changed things in a big way because, for example, in the height of the pandemic, we were actually doing one event per week for the members.
Was it over Zoom?
Yeah. We experimented at the beginning and we felt that Zoom was the best platform, and actually it's been working phenomenally well for us. So we've been doing one event per week. So every 2 weeks we would have a major speaker invited to speak on an important photographic subject, and every other week we would have a Nikon London Group meeting.
What do you do at those meetings?
Well, we experimented over the months, and we start off with news. Then we discuss new equipment, any new arrivals from Nikon, and then what we do is we have a showcase where members actually show their recent projects, but they are limited to 20 minutes maximum.
So it's a pretty much kind of time limit set presentation.
Exactly. So they're not doing big presentations. So usually we have 2 or 3 short 20-minute presentations. Then we have a theme. So every meeting has a particular theme, and everybody sends a picture on that theme, which we discuss at the beginning anonymously. But it's important because it's not a competition. We do not rate the images. We do not give marks. It's just basically discussing the photographs. And then right at the end, we have a technical session.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt you for a second. I had a vision of some sort of X Factor where you and 2 other members pressing the button, the cross shows up. So it's like, we don't like this picture.
No. Because I think, everybody has the potential to improve and grow. And I don't think there's any such thing as a bad photograph or a good photograph. So good old
photographer's technique, basically critique.
Yeah, it's critique and basically what we call constructive criticism.
Something you
So
don't get on the internet as well.
yeah, so everybody changes and improves at their own pace. Some people are in a different situation than others. There are some highly skilled people and ones that are less so. But the good thing is that everybody is improving.
That's true.
Even us, old folks are improving because you see and you discuss and you learn from everyone.
That's
So
true. We all evolve, isn't it? And in terms of
yeah.
this, sometimes you like one type of photography, and maybe 3-4 years down the road, you shift to another type of photography, which means you're going to learn more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have themes that really push everybody to their limits occasionally. So, for example, I think a very good one is self-portrait. Do your own self-portrait. That's not easy,
That's
for
true.
a lot of people.
It was actually one of our challenges when I was at photography school at the college, because that requires a bit of creativity. Because you could technically take a portrait of yourself just sitting in front of it, but then can be a whole kind of subtext that comes with it, or you can be very creative and make it more visual striking. So it is quite a difficult task when you think of it, because it sounds so simple, but when you actually once you get to do this, it becomes a lot of what do I say? It becomes a stumble for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. But, you have to make decisions. You have to have an idea, a concept, and if it doesn't work, then you try something else. And, you've got to be bold because, the situation that you put yourself in forces you to make a decision. And that's, I think, one of the things that photography is about. And doing it for yourself and photographing yourself is probably the toughest task of all.
That's true.
So we have looked at other subjects, but this is effectively like getting a photography degree.
That's true.
Effectively, this has become almost like a photography school, and it has become addictive now.
Absolutely. I would call it school for soul, personally.
Yes.
Now tell me, you were doing the walks before the pandemic. Are you planning to come back to them?
We have already started.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
When is the next one?
Well, we had one a couple of weeks ago. It was a very successful one.
Where did you go?
We basically, just to tell you a little bit about the photo walks, we try and do a different photo walk every time. We did this last one, and I always try and have a kind of interesting concept, an interesting theme that kind of ties it all together. So the last one basically was Camden Town, Kentish Town, Primrose Hill, Regent's Park. There was a nice addition to Regent's Park. There was a lovely Japanese garden that I had never discovered before. And obviously, if there is something Japanese or something unique or something that ties it somehow with Nikon, that's a plus. And then we went into Regent Street. So it was called the Regent's Walk.
Nice. So you got a bit of everything: shopping, punk rock, and Japanese minimalism.
Well, yeah.
All tied up in one walk.
Yeah. It's exhausting, especially in the summer. It's an all-day thing, and then we have dinner. And, the members, I think, really enjoy it. Really.
Do you look
really
at the photographs together when you're having dinner, or do you kind of discuss them later on?
What we do is we share them on Flickr, and people.
You've
people
got your own group
share.
or pool, as they
Yeah,
call it.
yeah. We have a London group Flickr site, and of course I publish my own photos, and people have a chance to see what the others have done. And of course, on the day they use the LCD screen on the back of their cameras to share. Yeah, and the next one is a riverside walk, because London is really tied to the river.
Is it the Thames Walk or some other rivers? Because obviously London has four canals.
It's huge. We're going to go to West London, and we're going to explore Strawberry Hill, Teddington, sorry, not Teddington, my apologies, Twickenham, Richmond, and it has a huge variety of subjects, everything from, the river life, stately homes, it's got boat building, it's got crowds, it's got wildlife, bridges, it's got some amazing Victorian tidal stations.
Get yourself a proper hiking boots in there, because some areas of that path are quite muddy. I can tell you that. I've done it.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, Konstantin, on this one, there's no muddy paths. It's
I
we
see.
try and stick to paved roads again for
Too casual.
for public liability issues, really.
So you're not
for
getting
insurance.
tents or anything, no?
No.
Okay,
I'm
not
afraid
overnight walk.
But this next walk will be in about 10 days' time. So it'll
I'm with
be end of this month. Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about gear. Are you a Nikon Z user now? Have you switched to Z mirrorless system?
Well, I've kept DSLR equipment because obviously there are lenses that I still want to keep using. As you know, I'm a collector, so I've got a lot of older lenses. So, for example, my DF I will never get rid of because it gives me compatibility with the past.
You see, my problem is you're a collector, I'm a hoarder. I tend to just get things and never sell them back. At least you actually making choice what's keep and what to sell.
Well, I keep most things like you, I think. But I got into the Z mirrorless system because, I feel that it's the future. And obviously, as a trainer, I need to understand and use the new system.
What Z do you have?
So I have a Z6, and it's also had the video modification so that it can do Pro RAW.
Do you shoot a lot of videos nowadays?
I do more videos, but I still primarily do stills. But one of the plans is to do a video course. So we are working with one of my associates. We're doing a very high-level video course for Nikon Owner members.
Oh, fantastic. That's really good.
Yeah.
So obviously Nikon has announced a few things recently. So what are your thoughts on it? Let's start with micro. So 50MC and 105 micro lenses. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think they were, eagerly awaited. I think everybody couldn't wait for the macro lenses. I think, macro lenses are very, very popular. As you know, I've written a digitizing course for digitizing your slides and negatives, and macro, of course, is a big part of it. So I have always had a 55 or a 60 micro and a 105. They've been important elements.
So pretty much all of them are part of obviously 200 mil. Yeah.
Yeah, and I use the 55 or the 60 for flat artwork when I needed to get quite close, and I use the 105 more for subjects that or animals or things, that flowers or things that I needed to get further away from. But, I think I have basically ordered both lenses as you would expect, because obviously they're required.
Yeah, you got to catch them all, isn't it? So,
the 50 I've already got. I was surprised that I was able to get one so soon. I think it's great optically, and I was surprised by how light and small it was. I expected it to be, bigger and heavier, but I think it's also going to be a nice lens for DX users, because it's a nice focal length.
Yeah, it's going to be nice for portraiture, and actually the bokeh is pretty good. I didn't like the bokeh on 105 F mount VR because it felt a little bit busy. So I'm actually quite impressed that they softened the bokeh a little bit. Obviously, it's not the portrait lens levels, but it's definitely a lot more usable. And also the 50 micro is going to be a nice standard lens on Z series cameras, because even 51.8, while it's nice, it's a little bit bigger and heavier. So 50 is definitely smaller. So as a nice pocketable thing, not really pocketable, but let's say it's a nice portable thing, it's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely and small, and one of the other requirements for me is when we do a walk that involves an arboretum or somewhere where there's flowers or bees or whatever, it's nice to have a small macro lens rather than a big macro lens.
That's true.
So I'm very happy to carry that 50 mil all through the day, along with other lenses. So yes, I think, and also for people who have the ES2 digitizer, things like that, where you do have to be close to the negative, I think it's the perfect lens. If you've got a Z camera, it's the ideal, I think, lens to have.
Tell me your opinion on digitizing your own negatives with a digital camera and macro lens. Is it better than a proper film scanner or is it not? Because you look on the internet and it seems like that negative digitizing with your camera is all the rage nowadays. But tell me, what's your personal opinion?
Well, I've been doing a lot of testing in this field, and what I can say is this. I have tested the best flatbed scanners, for example, from Epson. And I have owned until recently a Nikon scanner, which
one?
has been the best. I've had the LS
Was it 5,000 or
5000,
5,000?
yes, and I had the smaller one. And what I can tell you is this: the scanners are undeniably superb. However, the quality that you get out of a DSLR or a Z mirrorless is slightly better. Slightly better. There is not a lot in it, but there is one huge advantage, of course, with using the Z mirrorless cameras. You see the picture on the back of the LCD, you can focus, and you got basically an instant image. Whereas the disadvantage of the scanner is you have very high quality, but you have to wait for it. And
That's
you have
true.
to wait a very long time.
Yeah, if you scan it at very high DPI, it's definitely may take easily 50 to 20 minutes.
Yes, and it's a killer because all of us, I've got huge negative library and a huge amount of old slides, and frankly, I don't have the time to wait to scan all of these negatives and slides. So basically, we use something called the Essential Film Holder, which is a British manufacturer. It's a fantastic device. It keeps the negatives flat.
Not gonna lie to you, I've actually ordered one a week ago. I'm still waiting for it, but it's a lot cheaper compared to the alternatives.
The manufacturer is a Nikon owner, and he's a club member as well. And he became a club member out of seeing what we're doing.
I want a discount.
But basically, this has been, I think, a wonderful solution. And as I mentioned previously, I've written a whole course on how you do this. And if you also happen to have a wonderful Nikon Repro copy,
That's
Nikon,
a big stand, isn't it?
Nikon used to make these fantastic stands for this type of imaging. Basically, you have a wonderful mechanism that glides up and down so that it allows you to get close to your subject. And obviously, if you have a higher resolution mirrorless camera, you have a slight advantage because you've got obviously very, very large dynamic range, state of the art. You've got the ability to crop as well. But even if you have a Z6 or Z6 II, it's still good, very good, quality that you're getting. You get 24 megapixels. But I always say that if your budget can stretch, then you've got a slight advantage in using a higher res camera.
So get an iMacon for £20,000, and that's the way to go.
Yeah. And if you obviously, personally for this application, I actually prefer the 105 because it means that I don't have to lean down on the camera as much as I would with the 60. But I have no doubt, even though I haven't tried the 105, from what I've seen, the quality of the lens is, state of the art. It's an outstanding lens.
So would you say that if you're a 35mm shooter and you want to digitize your negatives, then go with AS2 setup and let's say 50Z micro. But if you use something like Essential Film Holder setup, then 105 micro would be a better choice?
Well, I would say that either is fine. With the Essential Film Holder, either the 50 will be fine or the 105. It's just that the 50 brings you a lot closer. And sometimes, you may not have room in front to even move your slides because the camera is so close to the actual slide. So yes, the 105 just gives you a greater working distance and it's slightly easier, I would say, to work with.
And I guess, obviously, the Essential Film Holder will have a larger ability to scan larger negatives like medium format or large format negatives.
Yes, I've spoken to basically the man who designs and who modifies the system, and yes, they are working on it. Yeah. Well, you can already scan
Medium format.
medium
Yeah.
format, but I think they are working on.
On a large format,
Yeah, yeah,
4x5, isn't it?
yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about the second release, which is a little bit more polarizing, let's say. So obviously we're talking about ZFC camera, and then we're going to talk a little bit later about the pancake lens. But let's start with ZFC itself.
Okay, well, my thoughts before I had seen the camera and I heard basically the rumors of a retro body, and I said to myself, oh no, they're going to do something like what they did with the DF again. And also, the fact that it's a DX, is that the right way to go? So my initial reaction was maybe, this is not the right approach for Nikon. But I have to say, when I saw the camera and saw the design and how close it looked to actually a very, very loved camera, which is the FM2. I felt that if they had gone for full frame, the camera would have probably been bigger, a lot bigger, and it wouldn't have matched the design of that camera. And despite the fact that, I haven't had or used DX for a long time, I instantly felt compelled to actually, place an order because I love the iconic design of the FM series, and I, as a child, I had an FE2. I currently have an FM3A, which I think is the pinnacle of Nikon SLRs. I just love the size and the design.
You can see the design similarities between those models and ZFC.
Well, absolutely. It's so clear, isn't it? I mean, the prism at the top, the Nikon lettering, the whole style of the rotary dials and everything. It's unashamedly a retro design, but with new twists, like for example the LCD. I think it's lovely that you've got that new design of LCD, which you can use it, for video. You can use it for selfie, video bloggings.
That's true. And you can also turn it and actually don't use it at all if you want to have this 35mm film experience.
Exactly. So I have no doubt that, the sensor will be brilliant. And the way I think about this camera is that it's a kind of, it's a fun camera for somebody who has, full frame equipment that uses it professionally. This is a lighter camera that you take with you, to record your life, your everyday things. And it's a smaller, lighter camera that kind of brings us back to the days of using our favorite, film.
That's true.
SLRs.
And then as the curious photographers, we tend to dip in and out of different brands and systems as well. And I know you were using Olympus Micro Four Thirds system back in the day, and also Fuji X system back in the day. And both systems are well known for their retro cameras. So what are your thoughts in terms of, let's say, the ZFC being unapologetically retro, compared to, let's say, the retro systems from Olympus and Fuji?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with retro. I think it's a design issue, and ultimately what's important is the technology inside the camera, and the camera inside is state of the art. And I don't mind, if it produces fantastic images and the sensor is good, the outside is just, it's just design. So
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the retro is a design issue. What do you mean by that?
It's the look of the camera. The camera has been designed to look like an old style camera.
Do you think retro design can effectively affect the way you use the camera and, let's say, the way or the speed of use of the camera?
Well, it has certain benefits, of course, that you can instantly view the settings just by looking at the camera. So there is a slight benefit there. But I have to say, it doesn't really make that much difference. I mean, yes, of course, the way you use the camera is slightly different than a more, a newer Nikon design, with the command dial and the sub command dial, and basically the fact that you have to turn it on to actually see your settings. Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues that Tom Hogan wrote about, that he said that the retro design doesn't solve the problem of usability, so it can hamper the performance of the camera. Now, in my opinion, that the cameras could be designed for different things. There could be camera for leisure in case of ZFC, and it could be camera for high performance. And those cameras are going to have different visual design as well as obviously controls and layouts, button layouts.
Yeah, I don't have so much of an issue with that. I'll tell you the reason, which is in my workshops, what I teach people is to set your settings before you start shooting. So you have an awareness of what's going on around you. You decide on the settings. So ultimately, I think whether you have a retro camera or whether you have a more modern, if you like, design camera, I don't think it matters much to the pictures that you take. I think the retro design is something that makes you feel good. It makes you feel good because you look at that camera and it looks different than all the other, black plastic bodied cameras around. And it kind of rewinds to a time when we had the film SLRs, which we so enjoyed because they were so small and they were so portable. So I think it's more, I think, about you and how you feel about the camera.
It's all about you.
And design, I think is such an important aspect, which sometimes we forget about, because
That's true.
If you look at the from when Giorgetto Giugiaro started to work with Nikon, the Nikon cameras were at the beginning designed to be functional.
That's true.
And there wasn't really much consideration for the look. But, from the F3 onwards, we've had cameras that have had a certain look. And I have no doubt that, it affected sales because people like to buy things that look good.
That's true.
And
I think ZFC has this timeless design of FM3A cameras, FM series cameras. It's kind of stood its test of time, isn't it?
Yeah. And we spoke about other brands, and I make no secret that I like the Fuji X100 series.
Yeah.
And the reason I like the X100 series is because there is that fixed focal length, which is 35 mil, which is the classic street photography focal length, but also it's a really nice looking camera, and I use it in the street and people come up to me and say, what is this is such a beautiful camera. So maybe these retro cameras are nicer to work with because people are less threatened by them.
That's true.
Possibly. And I think certainly for my street photography, I like something that is small, that doesn't shout too much, that doesn't have a big zoom lens on it. And I'll give you an example. On a recent workshop that I did, we were in North Greenwich, and we were with a group of photographers, all with big cameras and lenses. And we were approached by the security guards, and they said, "You're not allowed to photograph here with your big cameras." And I said to him, "Well, one of them had a Fuji," and I said, "Is this a small Fuji with a small lens? Is this a professional camera?" And he said, "Yes." So anything that looked large, was deemed to be a professional camera, and they said they would not allow it. However, he said to us, if you use your mobile phone, that's fine.
That's true.
And it's ridiculous, really, because if you think about it, mobile phones nowadays are, getting better, and the image quality is superb, and yet they allow everybody to use them. So I think, certainly for carrying with you on holiday, certainly for street photography, certainly having a small camera which doesn't threaten people, and maybe there is something ingrained in people when they see an old design that it's inherently less threatening than a big camera, then I think, that's a plus.
That's true. So there are different tools for different jobs. Let's say that, isn't it? So you wouldn't particularly, let's say, shoot sports and wildlife specifically with ZFC, but at the same time, let's say I wouldn't bring my D5 to shoot street, let's say, or take it casually for a walk with me. Yes, you can, but not necessarily it would be the perfect choice for this, because they're small cameras that can do similar things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is the ethos of this camera, that it's going to appeal, obviously, to people that like the old design, and it's going to appeal possibly to the folks who had these cameras before. And I, as I said to you before, I think ultimately, if the camera, technologically speaking, is state of the art, it doesn't matter a little bit. If you like it, you can use it for pretty much anything. And,
that's true.
I haven't had a chance to actually try the camera, but from what I hear, the autofocus is really quick and superb. I mean, like I said, I didn't like the fact that I was going back into DX because I have made such an investment in full frame now. But for this reason, I forgive Nikon, and I'm willing to give it a try.
Do you reckon?
But if there is a full frame version, yeah, sure, I would willingly, and if it's not that much bigger.
But this is my question. Do you reckon the success of this camera will actually decide the fate of full frame ZF?
Yeah, possibly. It's impossible to say, what Nikon are thinking, but I think, if they made a full frame, I think, again, it would be a very popular camera, possibly even more popular. Who knows? But I think it would be very appealing.
Nice. Yeah. What was the feedback from Nikon Owner members, the group members?
Well, I know quite a few have placed orders. I think the difficulty is, I would say that a very large proportion of the members that I speak to have got Z50s. And they love their Z50s. And they love their Z50s because they are incredibly capable. They are mini Z6s, effectively, and they take fantastic shots.
That's true.
And also the fact that you've got the swiveling LCD means that you can shoot from the hip, you can shoot down, less visible, if you like. I think the issue is that, those that have Z50s are in difficulty because, yes, they would love to get this, but they already have
they secretly craving
capable camera. But I have worked with the Z50 and I thought it was fantastic, but I did not want to go into DX. However, since I don't have that type of camera, yes, I ordered a ZFC.
What would be your advice to Z50 users if you take all the emotion out of it? So let's say, yes, ZFC is a beautiful camera, but does it make a logical sense to upgrade from Z50 to a very similar camera in a retro design?
Well, I'll tell you something that swayed me. This was an important factor. The fact that it was being sold with a full frame lens. Because, we've been waiting for the pancake lenses, because for us that like street photography, a Z body with a smaller lens would have been ideal. And so far the lenses have been quite large. So now that there is an announcement on a 40mm f2 and a 28mm f2, those are very, very appealing lenses. Now, if the Nikon is selling a camera that has a 28, full frame lens as a kit lens, then obviously that's a very appealing proposition because, it doesn't matter if you think about it, that the body is DX because it's just a crop of a sensor. But it's useful because, 28 works out as something like 42mm. So that's again, a good focal length for street photography. And it means that I get a lens that I can use with my full frame. I think, if
buy a lens and get a camera thrown in, yeah?
Well, buy the camera and get a good lens with it thrown in. Yeah. So for me, I think this is why I think the 28 mil was appealing, not just because of its retro design, but also because it's a nice focal length to use with full frame bodies as well.
The feedback that we're getting on the performance of 28 mil is very good. So far the reports are showing that it's a very nice little lens. The price is very attractive, and yeah, bundled with the camera, it's about $250 extra.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've seen, the first reports on the 28. It seems to be, fantastic in terms of performance. And I think it's an interesting and unusual decision, to have a DX body with a full frame lens. But like I said, to me, it made the purchase much more appealing.
That's true.
It made it an easier purchase because I would have liked to have got that lens. And like we spoke about before, the 50 micro is also a nice lens because it's a nice telephoto focal length for the ZFC.
So they're just missing the wide angle things, isn't it? Like something like 18 millimeter f2 or something, which would be equivalent of 28 mil, would be quite nice, isn't it? And maybe 23 mil, about 35.
Yeah. But, they've got the 18-140 as well coming, which is, it's going to be, no doubt, a very popular lens because it's the ideal, all-encompassing focal length range, isn't it? So that 18-140, I think, also could be the kit lens for that. I know a lot of our members already, because they have both full frame and the Z50DX. They are loving the 18-200 with both cameras. The 24-200 is a very appealing range because what I'm finding is that our members like to use it both with full frame and with the DX-based Z50 because it gives you 35-300,
Which is nice,
which is again a very useful capability. And we haven't really been here before. Because the full frame and the DX cameras share the mount. You have interesting possibilities of using both full frame lenses that you already have with this lighter, smaller body.
That's true. So talking about future releases, what is the camera or the lens that you're waiting for in Nikon Z system?
Well, I think something that maybe gives us a little bit more control of the AF system. I still think that the Z6 II and the Z7 II are fantastic. And if you look at how Nikon has upgraded their cameras with firmware through the last few years, they started off with a system that came in for a lot of criticism. And I think there was criticism because we weren't given enough guidance on how different it was than existing DSLR systems, and also it just works differently. And I think there is a usability issue there. You have sometimes with certain modes, you have too many things to press before you're ready to go. So I would like to see a slightly easier to use, more intuitive system that works more like what we had in the DSLR days, because the DSLR system certainly is state of the art.
Would you call it Z9?
Yes, and again, it's early days, but I should say that the Z9, I think, will be a halo camera. It will be, top of the line, do everything amazingly well. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing it, but I have to say it's not a camera that would be for me.
What camera would be for you? Let's say, like from what is rumored, we have Z9 and then Z8, which probably would come much later, yeah? So that's what we had rumored. Or would it be more like Z7 Mark III or Z6 Mark III?
Well, I would like to see, and maybe Nikon will surprise us, but I would like to see maybe a smaller body with similar technology, maybe not all of the technology, or maybe a smaller battery, and the larger body, which is more geared for sports photography, and having the the built-in grip, of course.
Okay, so something equivalent of D3, D700, which were basically the same cameras except the built-in grip.
Yeah.
And the build quality. Okay.
Exactly. I think that would be very appealing for me. A smaller camera, state-of-the-art sensor, maybe a slightly higher resolution sensor than the 24. Certainly, what we're finding is that sensor sizes are getting bigger. So I reckon that within maybe 2 years, low end would be 24. Mid-range would be 35 to 40, and the upper would be 60, 70 megapixels, something like that. And I think the other difference, technologically speaking, is which I don't think we've had before, is I think that with this next generation of cameras, I think we will have fast AF, fantastic dynamic range, very fast sensors, and great video. And for the first time, you'll have high resolution, backside illuminated sensors that do all of this.
Do you think global shutter will be introduced anytime soon for photography type of jobs?
I think it will be nice. I don't think we'll see it in the next iteration. I think it's a few years down the line, but I think it would be an interesting development. I still think that what I just mentioned, whereas before, we had cameras geared for sports. We had the D5, D6, maybe a slightly smaller dynamic range, but fantastic high ISO capability, very high speed. I think that what's coming next will have it all in one. So we'll have high resolution sensors, very high speed readout from the sensor. We will have very good dynamic range. So effectively, you'll get everything in one body.
At what price, Mike? At what price?
I think it would not be cheap.
Let's talk lenses. What lens you would buy straight away if Nikon announced it tomorrow? No questions asked. What lens that Nikon has announced that you need in your camera bag?
Well, I think what everybody is now waiting for are telephoto lenses, because we've got the wonderful but very pricey and quite large 70 to 200 2.8. I think it would be nice to have a 70-300. I think it's a very, very popular focal length. There is a rumored 100 to 400 expected, a 200 to 600. Also, I think for wildlife, it would be a fantastic lens. I also think that because the fantastic 24-70 f4 kit lens, I think what would really make a nice addition would be, a 70 to 200 f4.
I'm with you. But what is the lens for you? So tell me, if you have to choose one, what would be the lens that you really feel like you're missing out at the moment?
Well, I own the 70 to 200 2.8. I think it's brilliant, but I would certainly like something smaller.
So if f4 is announced and it's smaller, you would buy this one?
If there is a 70 to 200 f4, I would keep the 2.8 for certain, low light applications and sports, but I would love either a 70 to 200 f4 or a 70 to 300 f4.5. I don't even mind if it's variable aperture, 4.5, 5.6, something like that. The 100, 400, I think, depending on, the aperture as well, I think, and I think that is also potentially a very interesting lens for me. But I have a feeling that it will be not a very small lens. I think it will be a larger lens. So I would like to see lenses that continue this idea of quality, but they are large, but also having, quality lenses that are more compact, or have the special folding design, it's nice if, because we've got a 14 to 30, which is the folding design f4, and we've got a 24-70 f4. I think it would make a nice addition to have a 70 to 200 f4, which is a nice compact design, folding design that locks. I think for me that would be nice. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe a fisheye lens would be good. I love fisheye lenses for what I do and for spherical imaging, and a quality fisheye I think would also be something that I would be very interested in.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mike. It was a pleasure to talk to you, to the man himself.
Thank you, Con. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. Tell us where we can find you on the internet.
You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm on Flickr. You can search for me under my name. I am on Instagram. I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.